somebody is asking you to read something and you can't put that together, that to me, that's like being in prison.
And that it actually exists here in our city.
And that it actually exists, not just in Memphis, across the country. That it exists in the 21st century with all of the resources that we have.
Mid-South Viewpoint, a Christian news and information feature of Bott Radio Network 640 AM, discussing the news, views, issues, and concerns that affect our community. Join us now for today's edition of Mid-South Viewpoint.
Education means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It's a political football. It's a daunting responsibility. It's the door to opportunity. It's the great equalizer. There's likely no community in the United States where education is not near the top of the list of vital priorities. Yet, in nearly every city in the nation, there's a general sense that attempts to educate young people, particularly urban young people, are failing. Memphis is one of those cities. Hi, and welcome to Mid-South Viewpoint. I'm Byron Tyler, and we're going to be talking for the next couple of programs about education in our city, and what we can do about it, what's being done about it. You know, there's some things happening that doesn't get a lot of attention. And John Carroll, who's the director of city leadership, and we're going to find out more about this organization, introduced me to Elliot Perry recently, and we're going to welcome Elliot Perry to our program. Hi, Elliot. How are you doing?
Doing well. Yourself?
Doing great. Glad to have you here today, and we're going to talk about a passion of yours, something on your heart. And, John, I want to find out what city leadership's been up to and what's been going on the last couple of years.
Yeah, thanks, Byron, for having us.
Good to see you.
Yes, sir.
You know, I was at the 2012, just kicked off the new Forum series the other day. And I was telling a guy, you know, I felt like when you go to the doctor and they give you that cocktail shot, it's like full of vitamin B and all kinds of stuff to make you feel good. I walked away saying I got my John Carroll cocktail shot today because when I get around you, John, I get encouraged and you just give me vision and excitement for the city.
Well, thank you so much, Byron. It was great to have you out there and 100 or so other Memphis leaders. And it's just exciting when people want to get together and look at, hey, how can we work together to make this the dream city that we want it to be?
Now, you came to Memphis originally from Texas to connect with Fellowship Memphis Church. I think in the beginning you were just wanting to come and you heard about Fellowship and some of the ministry that it was doing in the city. And you were just, I think, a business guy that just wanted to be part of it.
Yeah, I'm from Tennessee, went to Texas, lived there for about 4 or 5 years, met my wife, and like, you know, some of our buddies were moving here to plant Fellowship Memphis. And my wife and I were recently married, and we're just looking for, we want to be a part of something of purpose, and heard what that church was about, and it was coming here to be a part of fighting traditionalism and legalism and racism, and so we're like, hey, let's just go there, get jobs, and be a part of what this church is about, and we thought maybe this would be just a pit stop on where we'd head long term, and totally fell in love with this city, and can't ever imagine living anywhere else.
You know, there is an excitement about the city when you get around people that have vision for it, that are involved with work right now, like Elliot, for example. Elliot, of course, we remember your basketball days, not just University of Memphis, but even at Treadwell when you were a standout there. Way back. Yeah.
Definitely.
Take us back to those days.
Obviously, I grew up here in Memphis. I grew up in North Memphis, so I have positive experiences and positive memories about my upbringing, being at Treadwell High School and Coach Garmer Curry, but also, going to the Memphis State at the time, University of Memphis, and then, obviously playing 10 years in the NBA. I mean, that was a big highlight in my career, but, that, to me, that's not enough. And, moved back to Memphis and wanted to be just kind of really use my platform in my own community to do positive things in my own community and show that, it's just not about basketball. It's about all these other things, and be a voice for people who either don't use their voices or think that they don't have a voice. And so, just back here, and we started Education Champions, and that's been what it's been all about.
John mentioned about our city having some racial tension. Growing up, did you feel that?
I'm sure I did. I've always had friends on both sides of the coin, but, I consider my friends my friends. I mean, it doesn't matter whether they are white, black, whatever it is. So the racial tension was definitely there, but, I can't say personally that I've felt it to the point of maybe people in the 60s.
Yeah. Your story is very similar and replicated many times over in our city. Your mom was 15 years old when she had you. Sadly enough, your father passed away just, a month after you were born?
Yeah, a month after I was born, yeah. And again, I grew up in North Memphis. In a community, I've always said that I grew up in a community that in a lot of ways take pride in getting its kids to conform to its ways, So, and I think the real way out for young people is education. I don't care how many footballs you can throw, or basketballs you can shoot, or baseballs you can throw. I realize that, education is your real freedom. Yeah. If that makes sense. And I've seen a lot of young people, particularly like young guys, and I asked them, one particular young guy said, what do you want to be in obviously he said a basketball player and to play in the NBA. And so I said, yeah, what high school do you play for? And he said, I don't play high school basketball. And so, it made me think, in a lot of ways it's sad because it shows that young people think that you wake up in the morning and you're just in the NBA. But there's a process that goes with that whole thing that I think a lot of young people want to skip, and you cannot skip that process. And I think it's a part of our responsibility to continue to encourage young people that there's a process you have to go through and embrace that process.
Recently, I had some folks from JIF, it's the Juvenile Intervention Faith Follow-Up, Rick Carr.
I know Rick Carr.
Rick, great guy.
Yeah, no question.
And some of the students that came in and did a talk with me, and one young lady was just telling me, she didn't want to be a part of the cycle that her family had been in. Her brothers were just hanging out on the corner, and she wanted to do something different, make something of herself, So she was, getting educated through the JIF program, the culinary school, which is really awesome,
Yep.
And so I was thinking how important it is to have people that you can look up to, role models. And there's not a lot of them today. You look up at sports figures, of course, but you had somebody in particular that was a mentor to you that made a difference. Michael Toney? Yeah,
Michael Toney. I mean, we had a long conversation the other night just about education in general. And we do have some disagreements sometimes, but I think they're healthy conversations that we do have. So it shows that we're good friends now. But Michael Toney is a guy who, I owe everything to, because he was the one guy who, even though I was in an environment that took pride in getting his kids to conform, he showed me something different. He challenged me. He gave me the confidence in myself that whatever I wanted to do, that I could do it. And that was not just a cliche. Sometimes we just use that for kids, and kids hear that. But, it can happen, but there's a process that you have to go through. And he showed me that education was not just this abstract thing that was out there. It was tangible, that, and in a lot of ways, you couldn't tie education to anything, I mean, if you look in your community and you can't see where education is making the biggest difference, then you can't tie it to anything. And so education just becomes, I go to school to whatever, some people graduate, some people don't graduate. But there's a tremendous amount of talent in our community that in a lot of ways I think, and I don't want to say that we've given up on, but that we we see as just this thing that's out there.
Right.
And, I think that if we hold our kids to high expectations, we put the best teachers in front of them, the best leaders in front of them in schools, and we build a culture that expects them to rise to the occasion, then they will.
Yeah. John, I know you probably know the stat. Of course, Memphis is the 18th largest city in the U.S. by population. High school graduates, some 35%. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. You're talking about of that population, of the kids who graduate from school?
Yeah, in our city, yeah, in Memphis.
Yeah, so 35% of the city has graduated from high school, or saying 35% annually actually finish
high school.
Yeah, that's the stat I'm more familiar with is how many are starting school at kindergarten, and then about 35% are actually finishing up.
Right.
And, just completely unfortunate, obviously, and the numbers just don't work in the sense of that if you're continuing to have, 10,000 plus students every year drop out of school and not finish that started kindergarten way back when. The numbers will just add up in the city of people that are uneducated and unable to move forward in the workforce. And obviously there's a certain point where it can become unsurmountable for the city to overcome unless there's just a radical shift and move towards getting kids educated.
How much does the environment play? In Elliot's case, we painted the scenario, of course. Mom, he was born to a mom that was 15 years old. Dad passed away. How much of an environment is a result of these stats?
I don't know. I'm not even begin to be an expert on all that kind of stuff. I do know that kids drop out of school in all sorts of socioeconomic classes, all sorts of environments, parents together, parents gone, whether they're an orphan or whether they seemingly have a great family. But it seems to me that, parents do play a key role or a mentor, a significant mentor, a key role into showing that child that they can value education from an early age and helping them push them through it. Ultimately, we see rarely the case, and it's a movie-esque moment that a child is able to motivate themselves all the way through the high school process without someone continuing to help them learn that discipline of putting in the hard work and going there and earning that education because of allowing them to see the future.
Right.
Basically, from the very beginning, you're teaching kids. When my children are born, they don't care anything about the future. They care about the immediate present. And, they're present moment hedonists. All they care about is just how hot I am, how cold I am, how hungry I am, how whatever. And maturity is just this effort of where you're able to, look away from the present and do whatever it takes in the present for about the future. And so usually it takes somebody else to coach you and lead you through that. And so hopefully we've got more kids getting that, and we're, more churches and more communities and more families that are engaging that process. Or unfortunately, we're just going to fight an uphill battle forever.
Well, I think too, Elliot, it's finding something that kids can lock into. For you, it was basketball, and it gave you a career. For me, I was just thinking back when I was in public school here in Memphis. I was kind of foggy about, ninth grade, wondering, what am I going to do? Yeah. And I was getting real kind of disgruntled with school, didn't want to do school anymore, and even thought about maybe dropping out. But and I don't know how big they are now, but the VOTEC centers, the vocational centers, there was one on our campus, and they had this program for audio recording engineering. I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. And really, that kind of laid a foundation. I've been in broadcasting, and that wasn't direct broadcasting, but it was associated with the things that I had interest in, and it gave me a drive. And there was this one professor there that I really looked up to, and the class was taught on a very high academic level, and some of the stuff was over my head. And I remember there was so many times that this teacher would hang around. He'd say, "Meet me after class." Right. And he would give me the same test I'd probably make a D on, written. He would, ask me to tell him the answers to the questions, and I'd make A's on it because I knew this stuff. I could tell you what it was. I just had a real hard time, with the written part because it was like this thing going on in my head. I don't know. But I struggled with that. But there was that one teacher that took an interest and took time.
I think that's always the case. It's that one person or that one teacher or just, sometimes you're just sitting and listening to somebody talk and a light comes on in your head just off of something that they may have said. So, but I do think that this is a responsibility of all of ours, so it's not this is your responsibility, this is my responsibility, and this part is my responsibility. Yep. If we say that all kids can learn, regardless of where they come from, whatever zip code they're in, every kid can learn. Then if given the right teacher in front of them, the right leader in front of them, the right culture, and being in the right building and being around like-minded people, then that's our responsibility to do our best to make that happen. And so, that's, to me, that's where the passion comes in for me, is that in the 21st century, there are still kids in our community that cannot read, that can look at a word and they don't know what the word is. these are not hard words. These are basic words, or they can't put a sentence together, or they cannot read. When you can't read, it's like it's prison in your mind. It's when somebody is asking you to read something and you can't put that together. That to me, that's like being in prison.
And that it actually exists here in our city.
And that it actually exists, not just in Memphis, across the country. That it exists in the 21st century with all of the resources that we have, all of the technology we have, and in some communities, in some of the poorest communities in our city and nation, that people are still getting the worst education has to offer. To me, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. And so, I don't want to, badger, because there are a lot of, I come to talk about a lot of the positive things that are happening.
Yeah, and we want to highlight
education.
those.
Yeah.
We know just the other night I was watching the news, and it really it saddened my heart to watch this parent who had been camping out at a place to be able to get her child in the school. And I think she camped for a couple of days, and the temperatures got close to freezing, and she got a cold as a result of that, And I was just thinking about, she represented hundreds of parents that want the best for their kids and were willing to stand out in the frigid weather to see that their child can get into a school to help them to excel.
Well, and that's why I support choice, because I think parents need choice. If you ask a parent, maybe you, where your kid goes to school, and if you are able to send your kid to a private school, that's a choice that you make, and you're able to do that. There are a lot of parents that don't have that ability to send their kids to private school. And so I've been to a lot of communities. I've talked to tons of parents, and it doesn't matter where they come from. I haven't heard a parent yet say that they don't want the best for their kids.
Yeah.
They want the best for their kids, but some parents feel like, education it's intimidating sometimes, particularly if you're not educated and you feel like other people know. But, I was talking at the Neighborhood Christian Center yesterday, and I was telling them that the biggest thing that we do have is our voice. You have a voice, and you have a right to use that voice to advocate for your own child. And this is not just about advocating for your own child. It's for me too, to use my voice to advocate for somebody else's child.
Yeah.
Because I know that somebody else did it for me. And, again, for me, that's what it's about.
Just on the backside of the FedEx Forum, where the Memphis Grizzlies play basketball, is one of the poorest zip codes in the state, just around the corner there. John, you're familiar with the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. And just a lot going on there as well. But definitely it's been interesting to see how our city has adapted towards, as the downtown's grown that way, and there's been a real desire to revitalize that area. But also, way before economics were interested in it, some of the great leaders in our city, like Ken over at Streets, were down there, and the guys down at Advance Memphis were down there, pursuing that neighborhood and saying, hey, Advance being a really great option, kids didn't get educated. They didn't have time to get jobs, and Advance Memphis and those guys came in there, and now they're educating people now and training them how to get jobs. Then you've got Ken and his crew down there at Streets that are saying, hey, you guys, you may not have the community surround you to get a great education here in this community, and it may be poor here, but we're going to recruit the people, recruit the volunteers, gather the staff, and create the programs and stuff necessary. We can come around and create real community, real friendships with you guys, a safe place to be, and also some great tutoring programs to help these kids, make it through school and get a great education in the midst of being in one of these poorest populated areas of our city.
Well, I was just thinking about Elliot's comment on choice. Dr. Bibbs with Creative Life. I don't know if you've ever met Carroll Bibbs before. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great lady. What's going on down there? Here is
giving her heart. I'll make no question about it.
Yeah, and here we see a private school working in the heart of the of South Memphis, and just having some positive results. But she's willing to go and be planted, and again providing a choice for the urban community there.
Yeah, and it's not just about private schools. I mean, we have some great charter schools in Memphis, and we have some great district schools. And, I think that's, what we seek to do is to say, whatever zip code you live in, there's a school in your community that's a good school, that's a safe haven for your child, and not just a safe haven, but your child will be prepared when they come out of this school. We're going to hold those kids to high expectations. We're going to have a culture in that building. Put quality teachers in front of them and leaders in front of them. And for me, it's about all of the positive things that's happening around education too, right. Byron. I mean, you look at TEI, what's happening with Memphis City Schools, and most people know about a Gates grant, but, they seek to evaluate teachers, more than once or more than twice a year. But it's not to fire teachers. I think people get a, distorted view about that. It's not to fire teachers, but it's to help teachers get better. Yeah, it's helping teachers get better. I mean, if somebody said to me, and I'm going to use basketball terms, Elliot, and this has happened, you're not there yet. I mean, you're a good, solid player. You play hard. You're a quality player. You can play in the NBA. But you have some deficiencies, and we need to work on them. And I want to help you get better. To me, that's a no-brainer. I'll be there every day. I'll be there early. I'll stay late, because I know the impact of what it could be. Right. So, that and Teach for America, Memphis Teacher Residency, the New Leaders Program. I mean, all of these programs are right here in this city. Grizzlies Foundation. We really tackled mentoring. Yeah. That's been our stand. Stand for Children. They're doing a great job in this community as a grassroots organization.
Well, so many right now, we're hearing in the news about, of course, trying to consolidate. This has been an issue, and other municipalities and outlying areas are trying to maybe possibly start their own, school system as a result. And we're seeing so much division right now in our city, and parents are wondering, can I really get a quality education in a Memphis City school?
I hate that, but again, education is just such a hot topic with people, and I think for me, it's a responsibility that we all have to make sure that we hold leaders accountable for the schools that they are responsible for, and I've always said this, that if you put kids, it doesn't matter where they come from. If you're serving a population of kids anywhere, in Germantown, in Collierville, in any affluent area, if you're still serving, urban kids, a lot of times you're going to get the same results. And urban kids have shown that in urban areas like Soulsville Charter School or, Memphis College Prep or Veritas or some of these Freedom Prep, some of these schools that are in Fraser and North Memphis, some of these schools are in urban areas, they're getting great results because they've changed the culture. They put the leader, they're holding kids to high expectations, they're pushing their kids, and kids are rising to those occasions. So I just think that, every kid can learn if you put them in the right scenario, in the right situation. And I hate the division in our city, but I guess that's a part of it.
Well, hey, John, address for a moment, if you will, about this. And as we look at suburban communities, sometimes saying, well, that's the city's problem. But I think I heard a stat that 70% of those who live in Germantown or Collierville work in the city of Memphis. And so, what happens in the city of Memphis or doesn't happen in the city of Memphis is eventually going to happen in the suburbs, isn't it?
Well, and not that necessarily could happen in the sense of education, but the reality of it is that, parents, I haven't met anybody who wants anybody to have a bad education. Everybody wants everybody to have a good education. But the reality of it is that when it comes to my child and my kids getting educated, I'm hoping everyone else can, but I know that it's going to take a while to fix the process in every single school. And I've got a kid who's in, like my kids are in kindergarten or first grade. So you start to think, well, I want everything to get fixed, but I want to make sure my kids get an education because I only get one chance. And so the fear comes is that, some of it warranted, some of it not, but, will my kids end up in a different school? Will they end up in a different school zone? Well, I like where my kids are now. What's going to change about this system? I want to make sure that this is great. And the reality of it is that some of the test scores aren't great in Memphis City schools, and so some of those fears that those are going to come over there. But hopefully, in a reality is that we'll be able to move on beyond this fear, and that there'll be a greater school system for everybody. And that it won't be just the city trying to get up to the level of the county. I mean, the county's, not this amazing school district that's held on a pedestal for the country either. Hopefully we can come together and work together and eliminate some redundancies and come together and create one of the greatest school systems the country's ever seen.
Elliot, you have a passion for an organization here in our city called Education Champions. Is that right?
Yeah, Education Champions.
Now, is this your idea?
Yeah, we thought about... I thought about how could I use my platform to advocate for just education in general, and also to highlight all the positive things that were happening. I mean, when we look at the news, we see a ton of negative things that are happening. And in a lot of ways, we think that this is just destitute. I mean, there's no way in the world that, we can fix this problem. Well, people on the outside of our city in other communities they are looking at Memphis like, you have a ton of things going on. I mean, we have, like I said, the TEI, the Gates money that came through, Teach for America. I mean, that's a fantastic organization, bringing some of the best and brightest college students in to teaching some of the most needy schools in Memphis. And, just the talent dividend there is tremendous. Memphis Teacher Residency, New Leaders Program that's always been here, a national program that's always been here, putting quality leaders in buildings and training them to be quality principals. And so, like I said, Stand for Children, who are doing grassroots efforts to galvanize parents and inform them, bringing people together in communities to inform them about what's happening in our schools, and Grizzlies Foundation. So there are a ton of great things that are happening, plus some of the charter schools, some of the charter school leaders, tremendous young people who don't think traditionally. They're not thinking about the way it was. They're thinking about the way it should be and the way it is, currently what they want to do in the future. So, and they want to make a difference. So this is a labor of love for them and a mission for them. And, I want to be on that end, that people feel like that this is my mission and this is my purpose. One of my purposes in life is to make sure that, I change the present in hopes that we have a better future.
I like the website. It's called MemphisEducationChampions.org. Yeah. It's laid out very nicely.
Hopefully people can go on it.
Oh, I hope they do, I'm going to have to ask you guys if you can hang around a little bit. We want to continue our conversation. I think we've just kind of scratching the iceberg here in education in our city. There's a lot more to talk about, and I hope you could come back and let's do that on our next broadcast.
Sure.
Is that okay, John?
That'd be great. We'd love to.
Well, on this program, we're going to say goodbye for now, but before we say goodbye, John, if folks want more information about the City Leadership Forum, I know there's some more coming up. Matter of fact, there's one every month through May, I believe.
Yeah, we do first Wednesday of each month. Our next one is March 7th, and with Shelby County Mayor Mark Luttrell. And you can find all that information at cityleadership.org, all just one word, cityleadership.org, and just check out forums and all the other events and experiences that we're putting on.
Of course, if you want more information about the Education Champions, again, go to that website, Elliot.
Yeah, MemphisEducationChampions.org.
All right. You're not a solo act. You've got some folks behind you.
Yeah, we have tons of partners, and I see this again as a collaboration. I don't see this as a standalone thing. Sometimes, I realize that sometimes my name can get me indoors that other people may not be able to get into, but I want to bring everybody in and just expose, what's happening in education and around education that's positive.
Well, we appreciate what you're doing for our city, your heart. We know you love our city. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to our next visit on Mid-South Viewpoint. Friends, that's all the time we have on today's program. I'm Byron Tyler. Thanks for stopping by. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Mid-South Viewpoint. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can email us. Our address is wcrv@botradionetwork.com. This has been Mid-South Viewpoint, another Christian news and information feature from Bot Radio Network 640 AM.